The stars burned red across the outer colonies, not from supernovas or cosmic events, but from fire. The Cathrex swarm had arrived without warning, without mercy, and without end. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Valiant Dawn, watching her fleet die. Ship after ship vanished from the tactical display, consumed by the living nightmare that filled the void. The swarm ships weren't built. They were grown. Massive organic vessels that pulsed with hostile life, launching millions of smaller creatures that tore through hull plating like it was paper. Admiral, the Roosevelt is gone. The Beijing is venting atmosphere. We've lost 60% of the fleet. The tactical officer's voice cracked. He was barely 23. Chen gripped the railing. She had fought pirates, territorial disputes, and rebellions in her 40 years of service. Nothing had prepared her for this. The enemy didn't negotiate, didn't demand surrender. They simply consumed everything in their path. All remaining ships full retreat to the inner colonies. Emergency jump on my mark. She paused, watching another blip disappear. Mark. The surviving ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the burning wreckage of New Shanghai Colony. 4 billion people had lived there yesterday. Today there was only silence. On Earth, the United Terran Council met in emergency session. The chamber that usually echoed with political debates now sat in stunned quiet as the reports came in. 30 colonies lost in 3 weeks. The outer defense perimeter had collapsed. Refugee ships jammed every route to the inner systems, carrying tales of horror. General Marcus Stone stood before the council, his dress uniform crisp despite 3 sleepless days. His face was carved from granite, showing nothing of the rage and despair churning inside him. Members of the council, the situation is critical. The swarm moves through our space like a wildfire. Every engagement ends the same way. We kill thousands of their vessels, but millions more take their place. Our ammunition runs out. Theirs does not. What are you saying, General? Counselor Park asked, though everyone in the room already knew. I'm saying we're losing. At current projections, the swarm will reach Earth in 6 months. We need to evacuate non-essential personnel to the core worlds and prepare for a last stand. The chamber erupted in arguments and panic. Stone let them shout. He understood. These politicians had spent decades believing humanity was unstoppable. They had colonized 200 worlds, built fleets that could crack planets, developed technology that seemed like magic to their ancestors. None of it mattered. The swarm had been doing this for millennia. 17 civilizations had fallen before them, according to the ancient records humanity had found. Now they would be number 18. Stone's communicator buzzed. He checked it discreetly. A message from Kepler 442b, one of the research colonies. It was from Dr. Ilara Voss, a xenoarchaeologist he'd met once at a military academic conference. Brilliant woman, though too idealistic for his taste. The message was marked urgent and encrypted. That was unusual. Researchers rarely bothered with military-grade security. He excused himself from the council chamber and found a secure room. The message played on a holographic display. Dr. Voss appeared, dirt smudged on her face, excitement and fear mixing in her eyes. General Stone, we found something incredible and terrifying. The ruins we've been excavating, they're not just buildings. There's a facility beneath them. It goes down for kilometers. In general, she paused, glancing behind her at something off-screen. There are machines here. Millions of them. They're dormant, but the architecture suggests they're weapons. War machines from a civilization that existed 3,000 years ago. The inscriptions call them sentinels. Stone leaned forward. What happened to this civilization? That's the thing. They vanished. But the inscriptions mention the Devourers. General, I think they fought something like the Swarm. And I think they built an army to fight back. An army that was never activated, Stone's mind raced. A pre-human civilization with advanced weapons technology. It sounded like fantasy, but he'd seen the preliminary reports from Kepler 442b. The ruins were real. The technology was beyond anything humanity had achieved. Can they be activated? He asked. Dr. Voss hesitated. The control systems are remarkably intact. There's a central chamber with what looks like an interface. But General, we don't know what these things do. We don't know if they're safe. Using alien weapons we don't understand. Doctor, Stone interrupted, his voice cold and hard. In 6 months, Earth falls. In 3 months, we'll have lost half of human space. I'll use anything that might save us, even ancient alien war machines. He could see the conflict in her eyes. Scientists wanted to study, to understand, to proceed carefully. Soldiers needed solutions fast. "I'm coming to Kepler 442b with a military team," Stone continued. "Keep that facility secure and don't touch anything until I arrive." "That's an order." The transmission ended. Stone stood in the quiet room, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. He'd never believed in divine providence or destiny, but maybe, just maybe, humanity had stumbled onto salvation. Or perhaps they'd found something worse than the swarm. He pushed the thought away and headed for the military spaceport. The transport ship would reach Kepler 442b in 4 days. 4 days to prepare for a decision that would define humanity's future. Behind him, the Council continued arguing about evacuation protocols and diplomatic solutions. They still didn't understand. There was no negotiating with extinction. Stone had seen the swarm devour colonies. He'd watched Admiral Chen's final stand. He knew what was coming, and now, deep beneath an alien world, there might be an answer. Millions had already fallen. Hope was nearly extinguished, but not yet. Not quite yet. Dr. Ilara Voss wiped the sweat from her forehead and stared into the darkness below. The excavation team had broken through the final seal 2 hours ago, revealing a shaft that descended so deep their ground-penetrating radar couldn't find the bottom. "It's impossible," muttered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her assistant. "This shaft is at least 10 kilometers deep, cut through solid rock with precision that makes our best equipment look primitive." Ilara didn't respond. She was too busy studying the glyphs carved into the walls. The architect language had taken her team 3 years to partially decode. Every word felt like solving a puzzle where the pieces didn't quite fit human thinking. But these glyphs were different, simpler, almost like they were meant to be read. "Quickly, warning," she translated aloud. "The devourers came from the dark between stars. We built an answer, but time ran out. To those who come after, use what we could not." "Cheerful," Yuki said nervously. "Should we really be doing this without waiting for the military?" Ilara checked her communicator. General Stone's ship was still 3 days out. 3 days while the swarm consumed more colonies. She'd seen the casualty reports. 50 billion dead in the last month alone. "We're not activating anything. Just looking." She secured her climbing harness. "Come on." The descent took 2 hours. The shaft walls were smooth as glass with glowing strips that activated as they passed, responding to their presence after 3,000 years of silence. It was beautiful and unsettling. The shaft opened into a cavern so vast that Ilara's lights couldn't reach the far walls. The team stood on a platform overlooking an impossible sight. Rows upon rows of machines stretched into the distance. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. Each one was roughly humanoid, about 3 meters tall, but their forms varied wildly. Some had multiple arms ending in weapons she couldn't identify. Others were sleek and looked built for speed. Some were massive, broad-shouldered giants that could probably tear apart a tank. All of them were perfectly still, covered in a thin layer of preservation gel that glimmered in the light. "Mother of God," Yuki whispered. Ilara walked forward in a daze, her scientific mind trying to process what she was seeing. This was an army. An army built to fight something that terrified a civilization advanced enough to carve facilities through kilometers of rock. She approached the nearest machine. Up close, she could see details. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Every joint, every plate, every component fit together with perfect precision. But there was something else. The metal didn't look entirely mechanical. There were patterns in it that reminded her of circuit boards, but also of neural pathways. The architects were masters of combining biology and technology, she said, making notes on her datapad. These aren't just robots. There's something else. Something that blurs the line between machine and living being. Yuki was studying the control systems. "Ilara, look at this." A raised platform stood at the center of the cavern. On it was a crystalline interface covered in glyphs. More importantly, there was a hand-shaped depression in the surface. 5 fingers, just like a human hand. They were humanoid, Ilara breathed. The architects looked like us. It made the facility even more eerie. Walking through the remnants of a civilization that could have been humanity's reflection across time. "Can you read the glyphs?" Yuki asked. Ilara moved closer, her translator working to decode the ancient script. "It's an activation sequence. Place hand here. Speak command. The sentinels will wake." She paused. "There's more. A warning. These machines contain our greatest warriors. We gave them our minds so they would never be controlled by tyrants. They will judge those who wake them. If found unworthy, they will not serve. Their minds? Yuki looked back at the millions of dormant machines. Are you saying those things are alive? I think the architects uploaded their consciousness into the machines. They made themselves into weapons. The implication hung in the air. These weren't just tools. They were people. An entire civilization that had transformed itself to fight an enemy they never got the chance to face. Alara's communicator buzzed. Long-range sensors. She checked the data and felt her blood turn cold. The swarm, they've entered the system. Yuki grabbed her arm. How long do we have? 6 hours until they reach the planet. The evacuation plan called for all research personnel to board transports immediately. But Alara looked at the interface, at the sleeping army, and knew there wasn't enough time. The transports were slow. The swarm was fast. Everyone on Kepler 442b was going to die unless something changed. She thought about General Stone's words. About using anything that might save humanity. She thought about the 50 billion dead. About Earth, scheduled to fall in 6 months. About the architects who had given up their bodies, their lives, everything to create a weapon against the Devourers. Alara, what are you thinking? Yuki's voice was urgent. We need to evacuate. We won't make it. The swarm will catch the transports in orbit. So what do we do? Alara stared at the interface. At the hand-shaped depression. The choice seemed impossible. Activate unknown alien war machines and hope they worked? Or die with certainty? She thought about Stone's certainty. His cold pragmatism. Maybe that's what humanity needed now. Not caution. Not hesitation. Get everyone to the safe bunker, Alara said quietly. Seal it and wait. What are you going to do? Something really stupid or really brilliant. I'm not sure which yet. Yuki hesitated, then squeezed her shoulder. Don't die, okay? I'll try. As her team evacuated, Alara stood alone in the cavern of sleeping giants. She could hear a faint rumble through the rock. The swarm was already bombarding the surface. She placed her hand on the interface. The crystal was warm, alive with potential energy. Her fingers fit perfectly into the depression, as if it had been made for her species all along. Maybe it had been. Maybe the architects had known someone would come after them, someone desperate enough to wake their sleeping army. I hope you judge us worthy, she whispered in the empty darkness. Because we really need your help. She pressed down. The crystal flared with light. The entire facility hummed with power awakening after millennia of sleep, and in the darkness millions of eyes began to open. The light spread like wildfire through the cavern. Each sentinel's eyes blazed to life one after another, creating a constellation of blue-white stars in the darkness. The sound was overwhelming. Millions of machines activating simultaneously, their joints moving for the first time in 3,000 years, gel sliding off metal bodies. Alara stood frozen at the interface, her hand still pressed to the crystal. She felt something flowing through her. Information. Images. Emotions that weren't hers. For a moment, she wasn't alone in her own mind. Then it passed and she staggered backward, gasping. The sentinels began to move, not in unison like mindless drones, but individually. Each one testing its limbs, checking systems, moving with the careful deliberation of warriors waking from a long sleep. One machine stepped forward from the front rank. It was larger than the others, its frame broader and covered in what looked like ceremonial markings. Its eyes fixed on Alara. You are not architect, the machine said. Its voice was deep, resonant, almost musical. Yet you carry the activation authority. How? Alara found her voice. The architects are gone. I'm human. Dr. Alara Voss. My people are being destroyed by an enemy we call the Swarm. They're like the Devourers you were built to fight. The machine tilted its head, processing. We are called Sentinels. I am Prime, Command Unit of the 1st Legion. You speak truth. We feel your species' presence on this world. We feel the Devourers approaching. It paused. We have slept for 3,000 cycles. The architects? Gone. We don't know what happened to them. Prime was silent for a long moment. Around them, the other sentinels had stopped moving, listening. Millions of machines waiting for their commander's decision. They uploaded themselves into us, Prime said quietly. Gave up flesh to become weapons. They hoped to win the war, then return to physical form. But we never woke. They died as machines waiting in the dark. I'm sorry, Alara said, and meant it. Do not apologize. You gave us purpose. The architect's sacrifice was not wasted if we can complete our mission. Prime raised one arm and his voice boomed through the cavern. Sentinels! The Devourers are here. We march to war. The response was deafening. Millions of voices, each unique, crying out in a battle song that made Alara's bones vibrate. The facility shook as the army began to move. Above ground, General Stone's ship had just entered orbit. He stood on the bridge, watching in horror as swarm bioships swarmed around the planet like locusts. 50,000 vessels, each one capable of dropping millions of creatures onto the surface. Sir, we're detecting massive seismic activity on the surface. Multiple locations. The sensor officer looked confused. It's like something is launching from underground. Stone watched the display. Across Kepler 442b's surface, massive doors were opening. Doors they hadn't known existed. And from those doors, machines were emerging. What the hell is that? The Sentinels rose into the sky on pillars of blue fire, anti-gravity systems that human scientists would study for decades to come. They moved in formations that seemed chaotic but were actually perfectly coordinated. No two Sentinels flew the same way, making them impossible to predict. The swarm reacted immediately, diverting thousands of bioships toward the rising machines. What followed was a battle unlike anything Stone had ever witnessed. The Sentinels tore through the swarm vessels with terrible efficiency. Some fired weapons that disintegrated matter. Others moved so fast they were blurs, ripping through bioships with their bare hands. The larger Sentinels projected energy shields that protected smaller units, while specialized machines broadcast signals that confused the swarm's coordination. But it was the way they fought that amazed Stone the most. Each Sentinel operated independently, making split-second decisions that complemented its neighbors perfectly. They adapted constantly, learning from every attack, changing tactics when the swarm adjusted. The swarm fought with overwhelming numbers and ferocity. They were a hive mind, coordinated perfectly, but the Sentinels were millions of individuals, each one thinking, creating, improvising. It was chaos versus order, creativity versus instinct, and the Sentinels were winning. Get me a combat analysis, Stone ordered, unable to look away from the display. Sir, the machines have destroyed 30,000 swarm vessels in 20 minutes. Casualty rate for the machines is 0.3%. This is... The tactical officer struggled for words. This is unprecedented. On the surface, Alara climbed out of the facility to witness the battle. The sky was full of fire and light, explosions blooming like flowers. Sentinel units streaked past overhead, hunting their prey with single-minded determination. Prime landed beside her, his massive frame creating small craters in the ground. The Devourers are broken. Their vanguard is destroyed, but more will come. How many of you are there? Alara asked. 10 million are combat ready. Another 15 million require maintenance before deployment. We are many, but the Devourers are infinite. Every battle will be difficult. Alara looked up at him. In the firelight, Prime almost looked alive.
Why did you help us?
You said the architects gave you the ability to judge. What if you'd found us unworthy? Prime's eyes dimmed slightly. A gesture she was learning meant contemplation. We judge based on intent and necessity. You did not seek to use us for conquest. You activated us because your species faces extinction. That is worthy. Also, he paused, we felt your fear and your hope when you touched the interface. It reminded us of what the architects felt when they uploaded themselves. Desperation mixed with courage. That is worth fighting for. The last swarm vessel fell from the sky, trailing smoke. The battle was over. Humanity had won its first real victory against the swarm. Stone's ship landed near the facility. The general emerged, flanked by Marines, and stopped dead when he saw the Sentinels. Hundreds of them had gathered around Alara and Prime, standing in silent witness. Dr. Voss, Stone said carefully, what have you done? Saved us, I hope, she replied. General Stone, meet Prime, commander of the Sentinels. Stone and Prime regarded each other, soldier to soldier, despite one being flesh and the other metal. Can you help us defeat the swarm? Stone asked bluntly. We were built to fight the Devourers. Your swarm is the same enemy wearing a new name. Yes, General Stone, we will help. Prime looked up at the sky, where more swarm forces would eventually come. But understand this. The war will be long and the cost will be high. The architects built us to win, but even we have limits. Stone nodded. He understood costs. Then we fight together, human and Sentinel. Together, Prime agreed. Ilara stood between them, between the desperate present and the ancient past, and felt history shifting. The architects had fallen waiting for this moment. Humanity had nearly been destroyed reaching it. But now, as dawn broke over Kepler 442b and 10 million war machines stood ready for deployment, hope stirred again. The mechanical legion had awakened, and the swarm was about to learn what 3,000 years of sleeping rage looked like. 3 months had passed since the awakening. The galaxy was changing. Lieutenant Sophia Reyes checked her fighter systems and glanced at the Sentinel flying in formation beside her. Its designation was Ghost, though she'd started thinking of it as him after weeks of flying together. Ghost was sleek compared to other Sentinels, built for speed and precision. His hull was polished black that seemed to absorb light. Ready for another day of saving humanity? Sophia asked over the comm. Always, Lieutenant, Ghost replied. His voice had a hint of dry humor that she'd learned to appreciate. Though I calculate your species should develop better spatial awareness. You nearly collided with that debris field yesterday. That was evasive maneuvers. That was panic flying, Sophia grinned. 3 months ago, she'd been terrified of the Sentinels. Everyone had been. But working alongside them changed perspectives. They weren't emotionless machines. They were people, just wearing different bodies than humans. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Azure Nebula. 300 human warships and 2 million Sentinels, there to liberate the colonies the swarm had taken. Admiral Chen commanded from the Valiant Dawn, rebuilt after her previous disaster. Stone had promoted her after her survival testimony proved valuable. She studied the tactical display with hard eyes. The swarm has fortified the nebula, 10 million vessels protecting their rear staging area. Chen looked at Prime, who stood beside her command chair. The massive Sentinel had become her unofficial advisor. Can we win this? War is not about certainty, Admiral. It is about will. Prime gestured at the display. The Devourers believe in overwhelming force. They have not adapted to facing true opposition. We will teach them. The battle began with a human missile barrage that lit up the nebula like fireworks. The swarm responded immediately, launching wave after wave of bioships. The formations collided in a storm of fire and fury. Sophia and Ghost dove into the chaos together. Her fighter was quick, but Ghost was faster. He positioned himself to take hits meant for her, his armor absorbing damage while she lined up her shots. They moved like dancers, each anticipating the other's actions. 3 hostiles on your 6, Ghost reported calmly. I see them. Break left on 3. 1, 2. They separated in perfect sync, the pursuing swarm ships confused by the sudden split. Sophia looped back while Ghost hit them from above. 3 explosions later, the sky was clear. Good flying, Lieutenant. Couldn't do it without you, Ghost. The larger battle was brutal. Human ships traded fire with swarm vessels at close range. Sentinel boarding parties carved through enemy hulls, shutting down bioships from the inside. The swarm adapted, developing new attack patterns, but the Sentinels adapted faster. On the Valiant Dawn, Dr. Voss monitored the Sentinel network. Since the awakening, she'd developed the ability to sense their collective consciousness. It was like hearing a vast orchestra, each Sentinel a different instrument playing their part. But there was something else in the network. Echoes of the architects. Their minds had been absorbed into the Sentinel collective, giving the machines depth and wisdom beyond their programming. Dr. Voss, one of the architects, spoke through a Sentinel on the bridge. His designation was Scholar. We see you understand our presence. You're still here, Ilara said quietly. Inside all of them, we are fragments now. Memories and instincts distributed across millions of machines. We gave up individuality to create an army that could not be controlled by any single will. Scholar's voice carried deep sadness. We won the battle against tyranny, but lost ourselves in the process. Do you regret it? Every moment. But we would do it again. Some causes demand everything. The battle raged for 18 hours. The nebula became a graveyard of shattered ships and broken machines. Human casualties mounted. 3,000 ships destroyed. 80,000 dead. The numbers were horrible, but they were winning. The Sentinels paid an even higher price. 300,000 machines were destroyed, their consciousness fragments returning to the collective as fading echoes. Each loss diminished the whole. Prime fought on the front lines, his massive frame smashing through swarm vessels like a hammer through glass. But even he took damage. His left arm hung useless, sparking with exposed circuitry. "Prime, fall back," Chen ordered. "Not while the enemy stands," he growled. Around him, a dozen sentinels formed a protective circle, their commander too valuable to lose. The turning point came when sentinel infiltrators reached the swarm's command nodes. The bioships were coordinated through massive organic processors, living brains the size of buildings. The sentinels had learned to target these nodes, disrupting the swarm's perfect coordination. When the fourth node fell, the swarm formation collapsed into chaos. Individual ships fought without support, easy prey for coordinated human and sentinel forces. "All units press the advantage." Chen's voice rang across the fleet channels. "Drive them back." The victory was decisive. The swarm fled the nebula, leaving behind millions of dead vessels. Humanity had liberated 6 colonies and destroyed a major staging area. But the cost was clear as the survivors regrouped. Ships limped back with hull breaches and failing systems. Sentinel units drifted in space, their power cores depleted, waiting for recovery teams. Sophia found Ghost after the battle. He'd taken severe damage protecting her from a kamikaze run. His left wing was gone, his hull scorched and dented. "You idiot," she said softly, checking his systems. "You could have died. Sentinels do not die easily. And your survival improves fleet efficiency by 0.7%. Is that the only reason?" Ghost was quiet for a moment. "No, the architect's memories influence us. They knew friendship, loyalty. I have come to value these things. I would not want you destroyed, Sophia Reyes." She put her hand on his damaged hull. "Same here, Ghost." On the Valiant Dawn, Stone and Chen reviewed the intelligence reports. The information was disturbing. "The Swarm Queen has been located," Stone said. "Long-range scouts found her nest at the Galactic Rim. It's a massive biostructure. If she's allowed to escape with her eggs, the war will never end. She'll rebuild the swarm somewhere else and return in a century. Then we strike now," Chen replied, "while the swarm is weakened." Prime limped onto the bridge, his damaged arm repaired but not fully functional. "The final battle approaches. The Devourers will defend their queen with everything they have remaining." "How many do they have left?" Voss asked. 50 million vessels, perhaps more." Prime looked at the tactical display showing the distant nest. "We have 3 million sentinels combat ready and whatever human forces can be spared." "The odds are poor." Stone studied the map. Every military instinct screamed that this was suicide. But letting the queen escape was worse. An enemy that could rebuild was an enemy that would return. "We take the entire fleet," he decided. "Every ship, every sentinel, everything we have. We end this." Ilara felt the weight of the architect's presence in the network. They were preparing themselves for one final sacrifice. They'd already given up their bodies, their civilization, their future. Now they were ready to give up their last remnants of consciousness. Some causes demanded everything, and humanity was about to learn the true cost of survival. The armada assembled at the edge of known space was the largest military force humanity had ever created. 500 warships surrounded by 3 million sentinels, all preparing to jump to the galactic rim where the Swarm Queen waited. On the Valiant Dawn, Admiral Chen addressed the fleet. "This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to this battle. The Swarm Queen must not escape. If we fail, our children will fight this war again, and their children after them. We end it today." Sophia sat in her fighter, Ghost floating beside her in the launch bay. Around them, thousands of pilots prepared for combat. The mood was somber. Everyone knew the odds. 73% casualty projection. Ghost said quietly, "Higher for fighter squadrons." "We are unlikely to survive, Sophia." "I know." She checked her systems one last time. "Got any architect wisdom for me?" "They say that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite it. They were terrified when they uploaded themselves. But they did it anyway. Smart people, the architects. They would have liked you." The fleet jumped together, tearing through space in a display of coordinated power that would have been impossible without the Sentinel's navigation assistance. They emerged in a nightmare. The Swarm Queen's nest filled half the sky. It was a massive organic structure bigger than most moons, pulsing with hostile life. Around it, 50 million bioships waited in defensive formations that seemed to go on forever. "Holy God," someone whispered over the comm. General Stone stood beside Chen on the bridge, Prime at his other side. The 3 commanders who had fought this war together now faced its final test. All ships advance, Chen ordered. Sentinel legions, clear a path. The battle began with a human barrage that could have destroyed a small planet. Missiles streaked through space, each one a small sun of destructive power. The swarm responded with organic projectiles that ate through shields and hulls like acid. The sentinels hit the swarm lines like a hammer. 12 million machines sacrificed themselves in the first hour, creating a corridor of destruction through the enemy fleet. Their tactics were suicidal but effective. Each sentinel that fell took dozens of bioships with it. They're buying us time, Stone realized. They're giving everything so we can reach the nest. Dr. Voss felt each sentinel death through the network. The architect consciousness fragments were burning themselves out, using their final moments to guide the machines in perfect coordination. It was like watching stars go out one after another. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Scholar's voice came through faint now. "Do not apologize. This is what we chose. We die so others may live. There is no greater purpose." The human fleet pushed through the corridor, taking terrible losses. Ships exploded, venting atmosphere and crew into the void. But they kept going, driven by desperation and determination. Sophia and Ghost fought in the thick of it. Her fighter was battered, systems failing. But Ghost kept her alive with impossible maneuvers and perfectly timed interventions. Around them, other partnerships of human and sentinel worked in the same deadly harmony. "We've lost 40% of the fleet," Chen's tactical officer reported. "Sentinel casualties are catastrophic." "Keep going," Chen ordered, her voice hard as steel. "We don't stop until that queen is dead." The landing force launched when they reached orbit around the nest. Dropships carried human marines and sentinel ground units directly into the queen's structure. Stone led the ground assault personally, refusing to send his soldiers into hell without him. Voss went too. She was the only one who could properly interface with Prime and coordinate the architect consciousness fragments. They needed her. Inside the nest, the fighting was brutal and close. The Queen's guardians were her personal guard, bioengineered monsters that made regular swarm units look weak. They tore through Marines and Sentinels alike. Prime led the way, his massive frame absorbing damage that would have killed anyone else. Behind him, 50 elite Sentinels formed a protective wedge around Stone and Voss. "The Queen's chamber is ahead," Prime reported. "I sense her presence." They broke through the final defense line and entered a massive organic chamber. The Swarm Queen hung in the center, a grotesque fusion of insect and intelligence. She was massive, her body connected to thousands of egg sacs that pulsed with new life. "So you are the Queen," Stone said, raising his weapon. The Queen's voice filled their minds, bypassing ears to speak directly to consciousness. "You are the ones who woke the architect weapons. You think you have won, but I am fleeing something worse." Stone paused. "What do you mean?" "The darkness between galaxies. The thing that devours even us. I consume civilizations to grow strong enough to fight it. You have weakened me. When the darkness comes, your galaxy will fall." Voss felt sick. "You're saying there's something worse than the swarm?" "Much worse. I was trying to save this galaxy by uniting it under my control. Your diversity makes you weak." "No." Prime's voice cut through the chamber. "Diversity is strength. The architects learned that. They built us as individuals because that is what defeats hive minds. You offer slavery. We offer freedom." Stone made his decision. "We face threats as they come. Today you are the enemy." The Queen screamed, a sound that pierced minds and shattered concentration. Her guardians rushed forward. Prime moved first. "Sentinels to me. We end this." The chamber became a battlefield. Guardians against Sentinels, each side fighting with absolute commitment. Stone and his Marines provided covering fire, but it was Prime and his elite units that reached the Queen. She fought with powers they hadn't seen before, psychic attacks that sent Sentinels flying, organic weapons that dissolved metal. She was ancient, powerful, and desperate. "I need to interface with the nest's biological network," Prime said. "It's the only way to shut down her control of the swarm, but the feedback will destroy my consciousness." "No." Voss grabbed his arm. "There has to be another way." "There is not. The architects understood sacrifice. Now I understand it too." Prime looked at her with his glowing eyes. "Tell the others I was honored to serve." He drove his arms into the organic walls connecting directly to the nest's neural system. His body went rigid as information flooded through him. Around the chamber, Other sentinels began doing the same, adding their consciousness to the effort. Voss felt it through the network. The architect fragments were joining the attempt, thousands of ancient minds burning themselves out to override the Queen's control. They were dying again, truly dying this time to save a species that wasn't their own. The Queen shrieked as her connection to the swarm severed. Across the nest, across the entire swarm fleet, bioships began shutting down. The hive mind was collapsing. "No, what have you done?" The Queen's body convulsed. Stone didn't hesitate. He fired. The shot hit the Queen's main neural cluster and she collapsed, her massive body going limp. The battle was over. The swarm was broken, but Prime was gone. His body remained, but the consciousness that had inhabited it was scattered beyond recovery. Around the chamber, 50 elite sentinels stood motionless, empty shells. Voss fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Through the network, she felt the last whispers of the architects fading away. "Thank you," Scholar's voice came one final time, "for letting us finish what we started, for proving that sacrifice means something." Then silence. The year that followed was one of rebuilding. Humanity reclaimed its lost colonies. The remaining sentinels, diminished but not destroyed, helped with reconstruction. Without the architect consciousness fragments, they were different. Less wise perhaps, but still committed to their mission. 3 million sentinels remained operational. They chose to stay with humanity, forming a new partnership between species. On Kepler 442b, they built a memorial. Every human world contributed, creating a monument that stretched for kilometers. Names were carved into it. Human and architect, soldier and civilian, everyone who had fallen in the war. Dr. Ilara Voss stood before Prime's empty chassis, which had been brought back and placed at the memorial center. She put her hand on the cold metal and could have sworn she felt a pulse of energy. General Stone approached, older now and officially retired. "You think any part of them is still in there?" "I don't know. The sentinels say they still feel echoes, whispers in their network. Maybe the architects aren't completely gone." Ghost landed nearby, Sophia climbing down from his back. They'd survived the final battle against all odds. "The technicians say my systems are fully repaired, but I still feel different," Ghost said. "Like I'm missing something." "We're all missing something," Sophia replied softly. Stone looked at the memorial, at the 3 million names carved into stone. "They gave us a future. The architects, Prime, all of them. The question is what we do with it." Voss thought about the Queen's final words, about the darkness between galaxies. That threat still existed, waiting somewhere in the void, but they would face it when it came, together. "We remember," she said. "We remember what they sacrificed, and we make sure it meant something." Above them, sentinels patrolled the sky, guardians of a peace bought with terrible cost. The mechanical legion had fallen so humanity could stand. Millions had died so billions could live. Hope had been extinguished and then reignited by those willing to burn themselves to light the way. And in the quiet moments when the network hummed just right, Voss could almost hear them. The architects speaking across the void of death. "We are here. We are with you. We will always be with you." The war was over. The price had been paid. And humanity would never forget those who had paid it.